doctrine of the Trinity. So Jesus Christ is not the Father. That's not what we as Christians are saying. He is not the Father. But getting back, likewise, Jesus spoke of himself as the bridegroom, Matthew 25 verses 1, while the Old Testament identifies Jehovah in this way. Isaiah 62 verses 5 and Hosea 2 verses 16. While the psalmist declares, the Lord is my light, in Psalms 21 verses 1. Jesus Christ declared this, I am the light of the world, John chapter 8 verses 2. Perhaps the strongest claim Jesus made to be Yahweh of the Old Testament is in John 8:58, where he says, before Abraham was, I am. This statement claims not only existence before Abraham, but equality with the I am of Exodus 3:14. The Jews around him understood clearly his meaning and picked up stones to kill him for blasphemy. John 8:58, cross-reference also in John 10:31 verses 32. The same claim is made in Mark 14:62 and John 18:5 and 6. The Muslim debater, he says, close your hearts and open up your mind. I will ask the same thing of all you listeners out there, to put aside your presuppositions, to put aside your Islamic presupposition. Put that aside and allow the New Testament to speak for itself. Allow the New Testament to speak for itself. Did Christ claim to be God in his time? Yes. Did he claim to be equal with God? Jesus claimed to be equal with God in other ways. One of them by claiming for himself the prerogatives of God. He said to the individual with who was sick, son, your sins are forgiven. Mark 2:5 verses 11. The scribes correctly responded, who can forgive sins but God alone? So to prove his claim was not an empty boast, he healed the individual, offering direct proof of what he said about forgiving sins was true also. Another prerogative Jesus claimed was the power to rise and to judge the dead. I tell you the truth, a time is coming and has come when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God. Interesting, Christ calling himself the Son of God, therefore excluding the Quranic claim where Allah has no son. And it's just not God has sons by the tons. That just doesn't get past biblical exegesis. Where Christ claimed to be the Son of God. And those who hear me will live and come out. Those who have done good will live will rise to live, and evil will rise to be condemned in John 5:25 and also in 29. He removed all doubt about this meaning when he added, for just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he has pleased to give it. John 5:21. Interesting. Can a prophet give life? No. As the Father gives life, the Son gives life. But the Old Testament clearly taught that only God was the giver of life. Deuteronomy 22 verses 39 and 1 Samuel chapter 2 verses 6. But the one to raise the dead. Psalms 2 verses 7. And the only judge talked about in Deuteronomy and in Joel. Jesus boldly assumed himself the powers that only God himself can have. Jesus claimed that he should be honored as God. He said that all man should honor the Son just as they honored the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. John 5:23. Listening knew and understood what the claims of Christ. They knew and understood that Jesus Christ was claiming to be equal with the Father. In this way, and again, out for stones to stone him for blasphemy. In John chapter 5 verses 18. How much time do I have? 11 minutes? Jesus claims to be the Messiah God. Even the Quran acknowledges that Jesus himself was the Messiah. So that's not even a debate right now. But the Old Testament teaches us that the coming of the Messiah would be God himself. The Old Testament teaches that the Messiah would be God himself. So when Jesus claimed to be that Messiah, he was also claiming to be God. For example, the prophet Isaiah wrote in Isaiah 9 verse 6, calls the Messiah this. He says, mighty God. The psalmist wrote of the Messiah this, your throne, O God, will last forever. That's in Psalms 45 verses 6. Cross-reference that to Hebrews chapter 1 verses 8. Again, in Psalms 110, records a conversation between the Father and the Son. The Lord Yahweh says to my Lord Adonai to sit at my right hand. Jesus applies this passage to himself in Matthew 22 verses, chapter 22 verses 43 verse 44. In the great messianic prophecy of Daniel chapter 7, the Son of Man is called the Ancient of Days. Daniel 7 verses 21. A phrase used twice in the same passage of God the Father. Verses 9 and verses 13. Jesus also said that he was the Messiah at his trial before the high priest. He said he was the Messiah before the high priest. So the Quran says that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, but it got it wrong because the Old Testament claims the Messiah to be God in the Old Testament. I'm sorry, I'm going fast. I have a lot of notes. I have 20 pages of notes I have to go through. So I'm trying to ramble through a lot of this stuff. But Jesus Christ claimed to be God by accepting worship. Jesus Christ accepted worship. The Old Testament forbids worshiping anyone other than God. The New Testament agrees also with this. But Jesus accepted worship on numerous occasions, showing himself to be God. He healed the leper worshiped him. Jesus Christ, the ruler, knelt before him with the request as well. After he stilled the storm, those who were in the boat with Jesus, this is what they said. Those who are closest to Jesus said this, truly you are the Son of God. A group of Canaanite women, the mother of James, John, and the other disciples worshiped Jesus without one word of rebuke. Imagine Christ receiving worship without saying, no, don't worship me, I am just a prophet. The disciples, his very close companions and followers, worshipped him after his resurrection. Matthew 22:7. Thomas saw Jesus Christ and cried out, my Lord and my God, in John chapter 20 verses 28. They could have only be allowed by a person who seriously considered himself to be God. Not only did Jesus accept worship to the true God alone without rebuking those who understood it, but even commanded, imagine, Jesus Christ commanded those who acknowledged his divinity. He commanded it and he commended it. Read John chapter 20 verses 29 and in Matthew 16 and verses 17. Jesus Christ claimed to be to have equal authority with God. Jesus put his words on par with God. You have heard, he stated in Matthew 5 verses 21 and 22. You have heard that it was said it says, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, but I tell you, is repeated over and over where Christ says, but I'm telling you. You have heard it, but now I'm telling you. This is repeated throughout. God had given the 10 Commandments to Moses, but Jesus said this, a new commandment I give you, to love one another. That's in John chapter 30 verses 13. John chapter 13 verses 34. Jesus said, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the smallest stroke, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law. Matthew 5 verses 18. But later Jesus said these words, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will endure, but my words will never pass away. Matthew 24 verses 33. Speaking of those who rejected him, Jesus said that every word that I speak will condemn him at the last day. So everything Jesus Christ spoke, we as Christians believe. Because if not, we will be condemned. And you as Muslims will be condemned as well too. There is no question that Jesus expected his words to be equal with God's declaration in the Old Testament. Jesus claimed to be God by requesting prayer in his name. And Jesus not only asked people to believe in him and to obey his commandments, but he asked them to pray in his name. And I will